This is our introduction to trigonometry. For most of us, this is a review of what we had in geometry class. This first page is basically how to set up my trig functions. Easy way to remember this: SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA is the sine, which is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine, opposite over hypotenuse. Then we have CA, cosine. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And TOA, tangent, opposite over adjacent. Once you remember this, or look on the board and have it written, or have this note sheet that has it written on there for you, it's just making sure you remember where the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse are. The easiest one for us to remember should be the hypotenuse. It is always going to be the longest one. The hypotenuse is always going to be the longest one. Hypotenuse is always going to be the longest one. Then we're going to have the adjacent. Let's go to the opposite. Opposite, and this is theta, this is the angle we're looking at. Opposite is always going to be across from whatever angle we are looking at. Across from whatever angle we are looking at. So that's the opposite of that angle. So if you find the hypotenuse, which is the longest one, and the opposite, which is opposite of my angle, the only one left is the adjacent. The adjacent is hard to describe, so I just usually find the other two. Once I have those two, the third side is my adjacent. Let's label one of these. So let's label the hypotenuse, opposite, and the adjacent sides. Number one, this star marks the angle. So let's first find that hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always this longest side. Hypotenuse is always the longest side. And then we can do the adjacent. Adjacent is always across or opposite from the angle. And then whatever's left over is my adjacent. Let's try it again. Let's do number 4. Here's the angle we're looking for right here. Let's look at the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is the longest side right over this side. Opposite, just whichever one's opposite. Basically, opposite is whichever side is not touching my angle. That's my opposite. And whatever's left over is my adjacent. Find the hypotenuse, then the opposite, and whatever's left over is the adjacent. Now let's set one up together. First thing we're going to do is we are going to label the hypotenuse, the opposite, and the adjacent. So if I'm looking at this, this is my angle. This is my angle again. We're going to have my hypotenuse. This is my hypotenuse, the longest side. Then whatever is opposite or across from that angle, this is my opposite. And that this is my adjacent. Why is it not? Okay. I'm sorry, we're not saying if we're finding which trigonometric function would you use. So once we've labeled our sides, we can go through and then we figure out which ones we have. We have the opposite and we have the hypotenuse. Which of our trigonometric functions uses the opposite and the hypotenuse? So opposite and hypotenuse, adjacent and hypotenuse, opposite and adjacent. So we would use sine because it's the only one that has the O and the H. We have the O and the H. O and the H is opposite and hypotenuse, which is the sine function. So this one is going to be the sine function. Let's look at one more like that one. Let's label my sides. This is my angle I'm looking for. Wait. This is my angle I'm looking for right here. Let's go with the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is the longest side right there. Then the side opposite or across is my opposite, and whatever's left over is my adjacent. We now have the adjacent and we have the opposite. So which of our trigonometric functions has the O and the A? O and A, O and A, O and A, so that's going to be the tangent. Let me skip those. I'll eventually let you all work on those. Now we're going to set some of these up. This F, G, those are the angles. So this is the angles we're going to use right there. So let's see how we're going to set these up. Sine, see how useful this sheet is here? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if we're looking at F, and I'm going to do F in green, and I'll show you why in a second. This is my hypotenuse for F, which is always the same. My opposite, if I go across here, this is my opposite, and this is my adjacent. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine is opposite, which is, I guess that's supposed to be F8. I'm just going to write whatever it has there. And then my hypotenuse is H. We're just writing whatever they have in there for us. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is G. And my hypotenuse is H. When I do tangent of G, I am going to have to use a different angle. It's no longer my adjacent and my opposite change. This is still my hypotenuse, but this across over here is now my opposite. That means this is left over to be my adjacent. So tangent is opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. My opposite is G. My adjacent is F8.